Ladies and gentlemen, my name's Paul, hopefully having an amazing day. We've got a couple of very interesting news stories to get through today, and I want to kick things off with Intel, specifically some comments on the company of what their plans are for Meteor Lake. Now, of course, we know that Meteor Lake as well as Arrow Lake are confirmed future products from the company, but there have been a lot of mixed reports of whether Meteor Lake will find its way to the desktop or not, or whether we will basically see Intel skip straight to Arrow Lake. But a very interesting interview has popped up online. I'll of course leave a link to it in the video description, along with a Twitter post by Ghost Motley, aka Charlie. It's actually a pretty good account. I suggest you guys give it a follow if you're on X, formerly known as Twitter. Anyway, at 6:30 to read Charlie's post, is there going to be Meteor Lake Desktop was the question. Desktop will come out in 2024. So, you're confirming Meteor Lake Desktop? Yes, was the short and sweet reply. Now, if you guys hop in the DeLorean with me and go way back into the dark midst of 2023, aka April, so not that long ago really, you will notice a high-level comparison. This was posted by Bionic Squash, again also on Twitter. And here you can see that basically it was thought early on that Meteor Lake would be up to 35 and 65 watt parts, or to put things in another way, they would basically be up to i5s. On the other hand, i9 would be Arrow Lake S, and of course, naturally this would be higher end parts up to 125 watts. Well, yeah, power consumption figures and desktop are a whole thing, but you guys get the idea. Both of these would be on the same platform, so that would of course be the Intel 800 series chipset, and again, as you can see, this will be on the LGA 1851 socket. And you will also notice there's, well, a couple of small differences apart from the aforementioned change in the socket itself. For example, there will no longer be DDR4 support with the next generation of Intel processors, and there are a couple of other changes as well when it comes to the general power delivery system as well. So this is definitely very, very confusing because there have been a lot of roadmaps, and I have seen a couple that have even been sent to OEMs, and they have basically shown us that, and I can't show the roadmaps unfortunately because it would be way too easy to ascertain where they originated from, so I don't want to get anyone spanked. But I can basically say that some OEMs have been sent stuff, and there it looked like, you know, the S products at the very least are canned. Now this of course doesn't necessarily mean that plans haven't changed. Plans can change really quickly, or they may have simply sent out, well, not the relevant information. And this has happened before. I mean, just very recently it was confirmed that SRF AP is actually a thing. 288 cores, they basically hid it from everyone in terms of their roadmap. They quite literally removed it. And that's why there were a lot of rumors that it was only going up to 144 cores. So it's very possible that that's what we're seeing here. Another possibility, and I was told this by a couple of people, that it might only be the H series products. So this could be for things like, you know, all-in-one PCs and stuff like that. Honestly, with something like this, it's of course best to always say, well, Intel are given a statement, so it's probably the correct one. Unfortunately, the statement is also a little ambiguous because, of course, desktop can be a plethora of different things. It's quite difficult because you can see as well that the tweet that Bionic Squash was responding to was from Hassan over at WCCF Tech, and you can see that this was also a statement back in April regarding desktop CPU launch. So it's very interesting. I'm going to be very curious to see what actually occurs with this, because the previous rumors were that basically Arrow Lake would have several different variants, and of course basically this would trickle down to lower end configurations as well. So for example, i5s would be again made of Arrow Lake. And the reason that this is also very intriguing is because Arrow Lake and Meteor Lake, I mean, I'm sure most of you guys know this, but it's not just a change in the name. There are some significant architectural differences between the two. So if you have, like, let's just make it really simple and say you have an i5 and an i7, let's take things like clock frequency out of the equation and the number of cores. If you're just running a single thread workload, there is a significant IPC difference between the two. So it's going to be very interesting to see what the marketing is like regarding this, assuming again this is right. So I'm reporting this as is at the moment. I'll try to do some investigation. But speaking of investigation, there's a very interesting rumor that has been circulating on the internets, and this actually has been reignited by Kepler_L2, and he states GCN bros. And basically, they further elaborate in the tweet that the support for all GCN products is going to start to become depreciated later this year. Now, you might recall, if you've been following the channel for a length of time, I can't remember exactly how long ago, maybe a month or so, I reported that this is what I'd heard. The difference is I heard it was from the 0.1 drivers, which are a little bit older now, but they basically decided to keep support going. Now, of course, this is interesting for a couple of reasons. The first is that GCN is not just Polaris, it is also Vega. And this also would represent some interesting questions because the Vega architecture is also finding its way into a number of actual reasonably recent APUs. Like, these things don't date back like to okay, Vega wasn't even a thing back then, to like 2015 or something like that. You know, these are products which are not that old. Now, what I heard through the grapevine, and I can't, of course, confirm this, but a couple of people have told me pretty much the same story, is that they were going to essentially kill support, and then there was some internal debate, and they basically decided to keep it going for a little bit longer. So what does this mean? Well, of course, it's not like AMD are going to send like a driver update, which is going to kill your RX 480. That's not what happens. Instead, it basically means you will no longer get driver updates. That basically means that you're on the path to, well, a product which eventually just won't be supported by games developers. Now, obviously, if you have something like an RX 470, you won't exactly be able to play like the latest titles of 4K. I think everyone understands that, but of course, many developers are still supporting those GPUs, and you know, they're reasonably capable, especially if you're willing to turn down the settings a little bit and start, you know, playing around a little bit with graphical settings and texture settings. And obviously, something like a Vega 64, pretty much the same story. So it's going to be very interesting to see how this is met. At the end of the day, support, of course, for drivers needs to end at some point. Like, you know, NVIDIA have done it, AMD have done it with a lot of architectures in the past. So it's not surprising that eventually it's going to happen. And at the end of the day, you have to remember that in terms of the number of software engineers AMD has, it is not the same number of software engineers that, well, NVIDIA has. And those are very important points. I mean, we've kind of seen a lot of interesting decisions recently from AMD. I mean, one of the most obvious ones that we've talked about ad nauseum, of course, is the cancellation of high-end RDNA 4. And of course, sometimes you need to do consolidation and stuff to work on feature sets. I have heard some very interesting things through the grapevine recently. Nothing I really want to say too much out loud at this point, but there seems to be a lot of, let's say, reevaluating inside of the company when it comes to, you know, what is being done and what's being supported and projects. And, you know, I think a lot of that is actually quite positive. It's not necessarily a negative. I think it's pretty obvious that, you know, some of AMD's products, for example, their CPUs are absolutely just ridiculously good at the moment. Like, everyone knows that, you know, AMD have competing in CPUs pretty well for the last several generations now. Like, Zen 2 was really, really damn good. Zen 3, of course, continued that legacy, etc., etc. But their GPUs have been somewhat hit and miss. Some cards, like the 6800 XT and the 6700 XT, a lot of the RDNA 2 stuff has been really great. RDNA 3, kind of hit and miss. So I think obviously it's going to be very interesting to see where the company's at. I have also heard some very, very tentative stuff that they are also working, of course, on things like ray tracing reconstruction, but I've had no details whatsoever. Just some very wishy-washy stuff. But whether that's going to be for like RDNA 3 based products or whether this is going to be for future technology, I honestly don't know at the moment. I've kind of heard some things where I could probably speculate, but the problem is when you speculate, it becomes the rumor rather than speculation. So I don't want to say anything more than I have heard that this is stuff that they're working on. And just logically speaking, given how well DLSS 3.5 is coming on, you know, it makes sense. But anyway, guys, I think that's just about it for this particular video. It's been kind of a bitsy one, I know, but yeah, I just wanted to talk to you guys about a couple of very interesting topics that I found. Anyway, take care of yourselves. Have an amazing day. Bye for now.